Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest, and his name is Kyle Smith. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Keegan, thank you for having me, dude. It was awesome having a solid warm-up conversation before, man.
It was awesome. I haven't had a warm-up conversation that lasted an entire hour before hitting record. So, I know that our audience is going to enjoy this episode because if we just had this kind of epic conversation, I can't wait for everyone else to hear what you got to share.
Likewise.
So, first of all, love your hat, and I got one in my car. But tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? What brings you to the show? What do you got to share with everyone?
Cool. Well, I'm up in the wintry tundra of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Okay.
And it's not too cold yet, and it can get real cold, where to the point Celsius and Fahrenheit match.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, minus 40. So it's pretty brisk. But I like it. I think I like seasons because it creates a very consistent cycle throughout the year. So it makes it easier where you can go into a winter arc and you can build something during the winter and then enjoy what you built in the summer.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's better than Texas. It's kind of just summer.
Totally. I went to Texas a couple of weeks ago, and day one, so it was 35 to 40 Celsius, so it was about 90 to 95. Like, it was toasty. And day one, just burnt tank top, burn lines, and it's deceiving because it's cool. However, the sun's just beaming on you. It's crazy.
Yep. Anyways, sorry to interrupt.
So that's where I'm from. And then what I do and what brought me to the show, I'll go with that one. One is good vibes. I like to explore the hosts that I'm wanting to be a guest on, and yeah, you got some great vibes. So, and we definitely clarified that. And so I wanted to speak about my practice and how I've developed my practice and what the practice can do for folks, and introduce a couple frames and explore the conversations that we have and get to go on.
Okay.
And then as for what I do, I'm a clarity consultant, and what a clarity consultant does and what I do is I help folks declutter their mind in order to make space to throw the party so that they can think about their thinking, they can get unstuck, they can celebrate the wins, and they can create goals and targets that are meaningful to them, and in the process develop stories that make them more action prone towards doing the thing, because our resistance to doing the thing, that's based off of, it could be a variety of things. So it's decreasing the intensity of that resistance so that it makes it a lot easier to do whatever we want to do in order to get to where we want to go. Because we get what we want as a side effect of becoming the person it takes to get it. If we stay the person we are, we're only going to get what we've ever gotten.
Man.
Yeah.
That's good. That reminds me of a saying that Command Sergeant Major at my rehab would always say, if I keep on thinking like I always thought, I'm going to keep on getting what I always got. And there's a little bit more to that, but the message is the same. If I don't change, nothing's going to change.
Totally. And then then the question goes, how is it that we change? And then we start with going upstream to the words, the stories, and the breath. So
and that's kind of what you deal with, right?
Correct.
Like story and breath.
Yes, sir. So that's what the practice that I developed has a combination of. And the practice is neuro-linguistic somatic experience. NLSE for short.
Okay. NLSE.
Yeah. And so breaking it down, neuro being of the mind, and specifically mindset, because I help folks develop their mindset and in turn develop their mental fitness. And I say fitness rather than mental health because it's ignoring one half of the coin. Because if we're only focused on mental health, we're ignoring what is the 20% providing 80% of our mental unhealth. So we're ignoring what makes us unhealthy in order to pursue mental health. So I put fitness instead.
I've never heard it put it that way. I mean, it makes sense. You go to the gym to go build muscle and get better, but if you stop going, you're going to lose the progress that you made.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Same concept.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you're strengthening your mindset through mental fitness.
Okay.
So mindset, something that's really important is everybody knows that developing mindset, and I want to make my mindset better. I'm working on my mindset. Folks understand it's important. However, there's not a practical definition that folks use as a reference point to gauge their own mindset.
Yeah.
So I define mindset as the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves or our opinion of ourselves. And so when we can think higher or lesser of ourselves. When we think lesser of ourselves, then we can bring things up and we can think of the stories or the actions or reflect. We can take it from thinking lesser of ourselves to thinking pretty good about ourselves. And I think respect is a huge one, is when we develop respect in ourselves. And then we can also think higher in ourselves. And the better that we become at accomplishing whatever it is that we want to do, the more confident we become in our competence. So our floor increases as we grow, because we're always going to find ourselves at any point in time falling into what's known as the hedonic treadmill, where we just stabilize at the new level. Then we have to increase it to explore a new level, then a new level, and a new level, like gameplay. Turn life into gameplay.
Okay.
So that's neuro, being of the mind. And then it goes linguistics, and that's language. And that's embodying what we say, what we think, and what we write. And also how we breathe. So how words, stories, how what we say, think, and write influence our behavior is words. Similar to using a fitness reference, because I was in the fitness realm for 13 years, so I got a lot of fitness references. The body is built up on macronutrients. So we have our carbs, our fats, and our carbs, fats, and proteins. And so those are the building blocks of the protein. When we consume, it's going to have an effect on our physiology. Words are the ethereal macronutrients of the mind. If we feed our mind quality words, we're going to have quality thoughts. If we feed our mind shit words, we're going to have shit thoughts.
Yeah.
So when we put them together and create stories, these stories and our opinion of those stories frame how we see the world around us and how we see ourselves.
Okay.
So that's how stories can be built up. And it could be past tense, future tense. It could be present tense. If it can be written down, that's a story. And it could be an opinion. It could be anything. And when I say stories, what that embodies is past experiences that either are ouchy stories, so ones that hurt, haunt, taunt, annoy, regrets. I've done a couple of death stories. That's pretty cool. And then it could also be celebrating the wins, celebrating my wins, celebrating your wins, celebrating our wins, celebrating progress, celebrating achievements that we've experienced throughout our life, and going through that process. And from there, we can go future tense, where we're actually describing the person that we want to be, or a day in the life of, and creating a story around that. So we can use this to retrain our neural pathways in our brain in order to work for us rather than against us.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then we take those stories and we change them from, if we're using alchemy for this example, we're changing lead stories into golden stories. And we're creating distance from the stuck and suck, and we're creating closeness and meaning to the things that are actually meaningful for us, and recognizing us as the rock star we are. So breath, how does breath tie into language? When we're breathing high and tight, we're good to fight. When we're breathing low and slow, we're good to flow. And so if we're holding our breath up in the chest, we're not going to be able to think about our thinking, because we're reactionary. We're not responsive.
Yeah.
So another example is, let's say you're just somewhere and you're set and setting, you're totally fine. You're totally safe. Then you notice for a moment, oh, why am I breathing up into my chest? Why am I not getting as much air? And then you look around, you're all good. And then you just say, no, we're good. We're safe. Breathe into it. Bring it back down to the belly. Because if we're thinking of our physical being as an animal being, we're training that animal, we're directing our behavior in a way. Okay. So the body may get worked up, however, we can down regulate through the breath. And with the breath, what we're able to do is we're able to go from being a thermometer where we're reacting to the internal or external stimuli and then meeting it where it's at, rather than the opposite, where we could be a thermostat where we are adjusting our temperature to our liking, to a Goldilocks zone. So we're changing the internal temperature of our state no matter what's happening on the outside of us. We're down regulating, we're taking control, we're becoming the captain of the ship. Just chill.
I love that.
And then for the S, that's somatic, that's of the body. So breath work is a huge aspect of it. There's reading and breathing, and then there's also using breath to down regulate and ground before exploring. And I could talk about how a session looks too, because it's pretty sweet. Okay. In my opinion. Totally biased. And a little bit unbiased on it. I'm like, it's pretty cool. So S, somatic. Somatic is of the body. And so that's not just the physical body, it's the energetic body. And so for the physical body, we may have control of being able to use our breath and all those kind of things. However, there's things that we don't have control of. And one of those things is healing. We don't actively say, we cut our finger and we're not like, heal. And it's not like, it's a passive process. It does it automatically. It already has that intelligence. Now the energetic body, although it has its own form of intelligence, let's say intuition, it requires active participation in the processing of unmetabolized emotions. And I say emotions as stories. So, and then actually I'll share this one because it's a pretty cool way to frame it. So if we're thinking of it, if we're envisioning a river, on the side of a river is a log house. And sorry, not a log house. It's a lumber mill. And there's lumberjacks that are in the river and they're collecting the wood as it comes down. The wood is the stories that the lumberjacks process. And then on the other end of that, they create something. It could be a house, could be a chair. It's taking the story, remolding it into something that is of use. Now, that's the best case scenario. As we're veering towards the worst case scenario, what happens is the water of the river starts to come down. The lumberjacks start to notice that there's less logs. Maybe it could be less stories of inspiration, less aha moments, less exploration of stories. So then over time, there's less logs and there's less river, until one day lumberjacks come into work. They look at the river and there's no water at all. Some folks would say, oh shit, I guess someone turned off the tap. I'm just going to go and hang out and do nothing and watch TV for a couple hours. Because obviously there's no work to be done. Then there's the other option where the folks go upstream.
Why isn't it flowing?
Exactly. Go upstream. And I forget what the term of this particular occupation is. However, there was a fella, or whoever this occupation, who was inhabiting this occupation, they would go to these log jams, and they wouldn't work at pulling each log out one at a time. He would look at the log that is the one that's holding all those other logs in place. Pull out that one log. That part of the river starts flowing. Those stories start flowing. There's not a buildup of that energetic story within our body. Emotion, energy in motion.
Yeah.
And so then, holy shit, we have this much more flow. We have these stories flowing through. What happens if we went upstream and looked for the biggest blockage?
Okay.
No matter how far back that is. So we can think of the river as a timeline of human life. How far back can we go in order to take out the big ouchie stories, the big log dams in order
Uh-huh.
to allow that flow of energy, that inspiration, allow those to be processed and turned
Uh-huh.
into something of importance or utility.
No. Okay.
Yeah. And
Huh.
so experience, the E for NLSE, is
Uh-huh.
simply it happens real time. People feel the changes as they are experiencing it. And that's a side effect of
Ah.
it being a practical practice. There's participation.
Mm-hmm.
It's participation and it is conceptual, so anyone can do it anywhere. And through the
Huh.
practice, folks can reframe and translate their own sentences real time in their head. It's
Okay.
pretty gnarly.
So you teach them how to do it so that they can do it later.
Yep. And then I
Essentially.
also I also encourage them to whatever resonates with me. And I
Mm-hmm.
also anyone that I work with, I always call them participants rather than clients because they're
Ah.
participating in. I'm just facilitating the space for them to be able to do it in a set and setting
Mm-hmm.
that they can
Ah.
feel or they can step into courage and explore
Mm-hmm.
these stories.
Ah.
So I'm a facilitator. That's why I consider
Uh-huh.
myself a consultant rather than a coach.
Ah. Okay.
Uh,
I love that.
Cool, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels good. It feels good to say, honestly. Like it's just a good vibe because it's the individual that I get to have the opportunity to explore these stories with that
Mm-hmm.
are finding their own solutions and epiphanies and ahas and
Uh-huh.
seeing that they are not as worthless as they believe, that they
Mm-hmm.
are as worthy as they believe, that
Ah.
it all ties in together.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does seem that everything ties into itself one way or another, especially whenever it comes to mental health, because uh, I don't know about you, but I usually tend to think about a lot of things I do and or don't do before carrying it out. So it's kind of like, why not think about emotions and stuff too? Um, but it's really cool that you developed this all on your own through studying, research, and figuring out what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And that is just way too cool because that takes a lot of time, energy, patience, and a lot of I'd say understanding of self.
Mm.
Because I know whenever I try new things or if I'm trying to develop something, I'm usually kind of sitting there and just I'll hit these roadblocks. And sometimes it's like I don't know if I should keep going or not. But it seems like you found those that were kind of blocking you, and you just went, you know what? Nah, we're gonna find a way around or over this or through it. I'm getting
Through
past
it.
that block. Through it.
It's
There we go.
always through it. It's not around it. It's not over it. It's not under it. It's through it.
Ah,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And so same idea I shared with you
Uh huh.
pre-show.
Uh
I think
huh.
it's cool to share it again. It's similar to how the stories are the dragon,
Mm-hmm.
and you face the dragon in order to get the gold.
Uh huh.
And rather than becoming a dragon slayer, you become the dragon rider.
Uh huh.
So the story is something that you own and that you not embody, but you
Mm-hmm.
integrate, or not, but and you integrate.
Uh huh.
And so that way the story, you own the story rather than story owning you. So that
Mm-hmm.
way someone doesn't feel in the story of the past, they
Mm-hmm.
become distant from the past, or distant,
Uh.
create more objectivity from it. They don't create distance in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of eliminating it entirely, because what's happened and all we can do
Mm-hmm.
is make peace with it. So
Yeah.
making peace with that rather than trying to feel shitty about ourselves decades later about a thing that is of no consequence or significance to anybody else except for our freaking silly brains and our perhaps shallow expectation of what is awesome.
mm-hmm. Uh, and I mean, it really does seem to come down to the subjectivity of things, right? It does seem that it really lays on someone to take care of themselves to a point. Um, and it really is just what story am I going to tell myself? And that's what you're breaking down. And I love it because you also said something not during the pre-show but more like in the show, so I love it because you defined a mindset. And because I was about to say, yeah, mindset, a lot of the time if I'm told to change my mindset, it's like, okay, well, I'm thinking negative, so I'm going to think positive. Like, that's an easy switch, but it doesn't really seem to yield that much besides kind of saying, well, it is going from negative to positive, so I'm going to look at instead of what am I resentful at or what am I mad at, what am I grateful for, kind of stuff. Yeah, that does bring about some stuff.
You can also do another frame on that one too. What am I
Uh-huh.
grateful for, and what am I grateful not to have?
Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah. That's a good
because
one.
then it's not it's just changing the frame where it's not I am grateful for uh, selfishly liking whatever.
Uh-huh.
I think it separates that resistance where
Mhm.
it's we're more prone to say what we don't want,
Uh-huh.
so we can say I'm grateful that I don't have.
Ooh.
So
I like that.
that also opens up a lot of possibilities for us to be able
Mhm.
to see the things that we don't have in our life in a positive manner as well.
Yeah. And but with that mindset thing, you gave it a definition that someone can follow. You didn't just sit there and go, all right, like it's about saying I'm going to be happy instead of sad. It was I'm going to take a look at everything and I'm going to direct where I want my attention to be. And I love that because you also bring in breath work, which is intentional, and humans are the only animals that it can apparently consciously control their breathing. I just learned
Yeah,
that through another guest the other day. I was like, I never really thought about that.
dude,
um,
you got to use it accurately in a podcast now.
yeah.
That is sick, and you're totally right.
Yeah, and there's so many cool things that everything you're talking about just ties into. And you're kind of sitting there going like, all right, I'm going to find every loose thread and I'm going to make a quilt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. So NSLE is what you
NLSE.
NLSE.
There
Yeah,
you go.
you're developing it or you've developed it. Would you say it's
Yes.
developed or is it kind of something that is
Oh, that's a
a
cool
li-
question. I would
like
say
is it
it's developed and battle tested.
okay?
Yeah. So I would say it would be with that one. And then I'll also put as well, because this practice together is an amalgamation of the modalities that have also gotten me to where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So there's parts of it where it's self exploration and just freaking reading and learning because I'm a nerd. And then there's also the utilities and the modalities outside of me. So
Uh-huh.
breathwork is one that component of it because it's breathwork and storywork that I combine.
Mm.
So the breathwork aspect that I've been doing for 9 years, and I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
preference for the breath style. I
Mm-hmm.
believe that each breath style is used as a different tool for a different state of being that you want on the other
Mm.
side of it. So it could
Yeah.
be to upregulate ourselves to get us pumped up for whatever, and it could be
Mm-hmm.
used to downregulate ourselves to chill.
Mm.
And neutralize. We can neutralize, so we can have, if it's a scale of 1 to 10, we could be a four,
Mm.
5, 6.
Ah.
So we can
Okay.
find a sweet spot, Goldilocks zone. This is where
Ah.
this is also where I think that we turn life into an active meditation by our activation or active practice.
Mm. By being mindful of our breathing.
Yeah, and then being in the sweet spot where we're not high and tight, we're not low and slow, we're real neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Or low and slow is better, but it has the impact of us feeling neutral throughout
Mm-hmm.
the day. So when we have that
Uh-huh.
neutrality, then we don't have racing thoughts. Without the
Mm-hmm.
racing thoughts to keep us occupied and distracted, we can
Mm-hmm.
just simply focus on the thing that we're doing in order to get to where we want to go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those racing thoughts seem to be what keep a lot of people going and be able to just kind of snap at a moment's notice because they're just so preoccupied with everything else that
Mm-hmm.
one little thing that's saying the straw that broke the camel's back is a real thing. Because even though that one moment in time can be super insignificant and really small, it can just be the one thing that sets me off. And I know I've had many of those moments, and it's usually because I'm so preoccupied with all this negativity that it's just one other thing and then the bottle explodes. And I don't
Totally.
have control of what happens. All I have to do afterwards is deal with the consequences and try to hope I can salvage something.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that doesn't work. So I've had to figure out a way to change myself so that I can change everything else. And I just don't really like having lived in negativity for so long. And I wish that I had reached out to people like you way long ago, and you're doing it like I said, and you said it. You pulled from all these different areas, and you've made it into one. And now you're sitting here and you're wanting to share it and spread it with everyone else.
Totally.
And that is just amazing. So whenever you're talking about stories, they have a huge impact on us, whether we know it or not.
Yes.
And
either consciously or unconsciously.
And I love how you said that it could be anything, even as simple as an opinion, because you form an opinion from somewhere. So that story is ultimately what founds your opinion. And but
dude, you're slaying it, man. I just got a shiver down my spine. I'm like, bro, you said that so well. That's poetry in motion right there.
Well, thanks. Inspiration, I guess. But whenever we're looking at those kind of things, it's fine. I like to sit there and kind of just downplay it a lot of the time. Like my opinion is my opinion, and it's because of this. But because it's mine, suddenly I'm protective over an opinion. But you had talked about it a little. Yeah.
Can I shift something there? Or say that last part about what you said about opinion there.
I'm protective about my opinion. It's mine.
Now, take out of opinion and put me.
I'm protective of me?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's a translation. We turned from a projection to a reflection. And it's not the belief you're holding, it's the belief and how it pertains to your identity. So when we take the reflection, then we can see, how is it that I'm protecting myself? What does this mean to me?
That's why I or other people would have a hard time reflecting on certain things, because their defense mechanisms. I didn't really think an opinion like that could be a defense mechanism, but no, you're entirely right. Because, well, I'm saying defense mechanism. You're just saying it is a part of my identity, and
you're defending your identity.
Yeah.
So one's the identity, and you're utilizing that tool in order to protect it.
And
it's your conceptual weaponry.
It's just my selective choice of weapon. There we go. So
for self-flagellation, yeah.
I was about to say Morning Star, Cat of Nine Tails,
Yeah, exactly. The good stuff.
Something that's a little sturdy but has some reach.
Yeah. Awesome.
But
totally.
So shifting an opinion isn't an easy thing to do, because that shapes a worldview as well, not just of self, but of how I see the world. My opinion is my perspective, which is a lens of how I look at the world. So, in a sense, you're kind of telling people that it's okay to take those glasses off and see it is for what it is. And it's okay to tell a different, put on another shade of glasses. Like, they don't have to be sunglasses where it's all black. They can be green or rose color tinted. After you flip it in the way that's going to benefit you the best.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. Because when we dive into the stories, and I'll say on the storywork aspect, that one I learned from the Enlifted program. This is a full cert, ENLIFTED, and they do. Okay. They don't have coaches. They teach the practice.
Oh wow.
So I'm just spreading that. I like to make sure that I reference folks and people and certs that got me to this point. What else was I was gonna go with something on that? Oh shoot, I forgot. What were you saying right there? Did you ask? I don't think you did. Identity. Man, it was identity, belief.
Identity, belief. Oh, how changing an opinion.
Oh yeah. Oh right. So changing an opinion. It would be first writing the opinion down, or the statement, or what it is, because when and I would say for anything, if you want to start with uncluttering the mind, just write down the stories and write them down conversationally as if you're saying it to someone else, and use proper punctuation and grammar. Like, so you're telling a story, or you can envision it as if you're just writing down what you're seeing. So that right there already creates space, because it's an exposure point. So it's the first point of exposure in a safe set and setting. Anything that's harmful is our own doing. We feel it inside because we're revving it up in here. So for decluttering, just keep on writing things down until it's out. And so how this goes with opinions specifically, we can write down the opinion, then we can reflect on it, we can read through it. I have this opinion. Then think, what does this opinion mean to me? What does this opinion mean about me? Did I adopt this opinion, or was it something that I pursued? Because many of the times, the stories that we tell ourselves, whether it's about the world or ourselves, they were adopted early on in our life from, we can say parents, we can say professors, we can say preachers, political, there's a whole bunch of P's to reference authority figures, police. And so we adopt these unconsciously, and if we don't sift through the ones that we care about and don't care about, or we sift through the ones that have been adopted rather than created, what happens is, when we understand why we have the opinion and where we got the opinion from, or create whether or not we did it, what happens is we have the opportunity to just shift through what is true to us, and to be able to say, oh, I learned this from my mom, I learned this from my dad, I learned this from my grandparents. I was told in grade 2 that I wasn't going to do very well in school because blah 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 blah, which is an accurate story for myself. I completely blew that out of the water. And so then when we have these opinions, then we see where they're from. Is it mine, or is it someone else's? And then what we can do after that is actually test the validity and rebuttal our own opinion.
Okay.
So I believe that when we build a true opinion, it's by looking at both sides of the coin. So I'll use like a fun political part. This is my political context.
Okay.
Left wing, right wing, both wings of the same bird. And so when you see the whole picture, you don't have that ignorance to what is on other sides. You get to make a data-driven decision. So when you're looking at an opinion, you're testing the validity, you're trying to rebuttal it, then it reinforces, or you discard the opinion because you can't validate it either through personal experience or statistical data, or a story that was developed by the self in order to share it with others. So a lot of folks will adopt an identity because they haven't created an identity. And so we actually, until we choose otherwise, we are just going to unconsciously adopt what's around us, and we're just going to become a duplicate of that. We're not going to become our own subjective, authentic self.
Oh, man.
So we just become a clone rather than our own sovereign character.
Man, that was a lot to unpack right there.
Man, I was flowing. Really I did have a moment in the back of my mind. I'm like, don't stop, you'll forget. Don't stop, you'll forget.
Well, I'm glad you didn't. And like I said, there was a lot to go right there, and I don't know where I want to start with that. But I do love how you were talking about the left wing, right wing, same bird, because to me, I think the same thing. I like to try to look at the similarities in things and not so much the differences. Ooh. Because like I had shared with you in the pre-show, and I'm sure some audience members have heard this before, but whenever I was in rehab, people arguing over their drug of choice or what got them in there, and whose is better and whatnot, and who had to do what to get what. And I'm kind of sitting there going like, guys, we're in the same place. Like, our story ended up the same. Like, how we got here is different, but the end road was the same. And I try to look at life the same with many things, because the way that we try to get somewhere may differ, but in the end, we're all trying to get happy. Like, we're trying to be loved and be loved at the end of the day. We're trying to love and be loved. Yeah. And essentially how we go about it is different, but at the same time, why should I push my beliefs onto someone else? Like, it's like if I see someone put creamer in their coffee, I drink mine black, but I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong and scream in their face about it. But a lot of people like to do that. And I also find that I do that with myself whenever it comes to opinions sometimes, you know, just being that biggest critic of myself. And it kind of goes along with that opinion of I'm worthless, I'm not good enough. And so you're saying that we can change our story through telling the story and then breathwork. So let's explore the breathwork aspect of the story, if you don't mind.
Totally. Absolutely. Totally cool with that.
Okay.
So the breathwork, so I'll talk about how I have a session as well. Mm-hmm. So it starts with, conversation, 5 to 10 minutes of conversation. I call this a vibe check, or just tuning our vibes.
Okay.
And then we go into 10 to 15 minutes of breath work. Mm-hmm. And with that 5 to 10 minutes where I'm chatting with the participant or participants, because I can do it with one-to-one or one-to-many. Just get a gauge on where they are, because I meet them where they're at, and see how they're feeling. They could be highly elevated, like I'm freaking slaying it, or it was a really tough whatever, or I had this thing happen last week, and then whatever it could be. So what I like to do is I like to cater the breath sesh to go to base level neutrality no matter what. So even if they're feeling low, I want to bring them up to center. Even if they're feeling really high, I want to bring them down to center. And that way, so I'll just use whatever tool in order to be able to do that. If they're feeling low, then I'll do a breath of fire style, where it's like quick inhales through the nose, where it's just quick. And that just up-regulates to be able to go through. So you're pushing through your belly, like you're pushing your belly button to the back of your spine, and you're using your diaphragm to pump the air out your nose, and it comes in automatically. So that's just to up-regulate. And then if I want to down-regulate, then it could be something slower, where it'd be tempo breathing, where it'd be 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. And then if I wanted to supercharge it, I would do it where it would be funnel breathing, where it would be going in through the mouth, and then real slow. So if that one, someone's feeling elevated, that one brings them down. Now, the reason for that balance, that equanimity, and I'll use the range from 1 to 10, 4, 5, 6, that's the sweet spot.
Okay.
And I believe that's the sweet spot because even if it's a really happy story or a really sad story, you're going to have an intensity in either case. The intensity does not indicate negative or positive. It's just the intensity of what you're feeling and you're experiencing in the moment. So 4, 5, 6 is where we're not too high and we're not too low. We're just right. That's why I refer to it as the Goldilocks zone.
Yeah.
Obviously. And fairy tales, why not? And so when they're in that state, whatever stories we go into, because after that I say, is there anything that you want to work on or off the document? Because we share a Google Doc. So everyone that I work with, we are literally on the same page. What they wrote is their thoughts. And we just explore it. I don't need to interpret their thoughts off the fly. I assist with the individual finding their own meaning in the story. I just ask questions. And so something else that had just popped up and it tied over to a thought when it comes to communicating. So the coffee part, like, you're wrong, like saying that. I think that saying to someone that what they're doing is inaccurate is definitely not a good way to go about it. I also think that if someone has beliefs that have good intentions and there's something that the other person may not know, a sentence that I absolutely love: questions pull, statements push. So if someone has a particular belief, oh, interesting, why is it that you have that belief? Where did that belief come from? So then that way they get to think about their thinking in that moment to be able to come up with information to validate their communication. Yeah. So questions pull, statements push.
Yeah, that is really, wow. Yeah, that's insightful. I'm going to have to keep that in mind because, man, I know some people that could question a little bit more.
Totally. And legit just use questions. It's like, great. Breathwork. Oh, so we go into stories and whatever, it's a dealer's choice. Whatever someone wants to explore, totally open to explore. The one thing I will not explore is a story that someone doesn't want to explore.
Oh, okay.
I could not be paid an infinite amount of money to go into a story that someone does not want to explore. When the person, so if someone comes up with a story, I get them to title it. So they have a reference point to go back to write the story out on their own time, or we can revisit it later on. Because I do, sometimes we get pretty close to poking the balloon, and some folks are ready to poke the balloon, and some folks are not ready to poke the balloon. So with this practice, the folks that get the most out of this practice have three things in common, and that's an open-mindedness. It is it's an open-mindedness to explore. So explore their stories and explore modalities. They have a high desirability to change. They want change. So you can't, it's difficult. I'm not going to work with someone that's not going to want to change.
Yeah.
That's 100% on their wheelhouse. And then the third thing is that they're open to testing their pain threshold. Yeah.
That's probably a really good indicator.
Yeah, totally. Because change hurts.
It does.
Whether it's psychological, conceptual, we still feel it. So in alleviating that pain, we become healed rather than heal. So we become healed.
Okay.
Yeah. And then something else is fun too, is we're going with words as well, is we can have curse words or we can have cure words.
Ooh, I never thought about that.
Right? Just take out the S.
Yeah.
So then the stories that we come up with, is it curing me or is it cursing me? So that's another way that we frame it. So go into the stories with the participant and we go through either a language game, and I've played language games on the podcast before. It's called the Should Detox, SHOULD. We can do that on it, or we can do it later. It's just a fun language game, and if anyone ever did it solo, they can reach out to me and let me know how it went. So if it's not a language game or a lighter session, then we'll go for a heavier session. And the heavy session, we introduce the 4-step method. And the 4-stepping, that's the practical, just, I'm going to go 4-step this, going to go 4-stepping. And it's not dancing. It's the practice of writing out those stories and getting them out of your head and onto paper or onto a laptop. So earlier when we were talking about writing things down to at least get it out of the head, that's the first step. So title it, write it down conversationally as if you're speaking to someone and telling them about your experience, or as if you're looking at it on a TV screen.
Yeah.
So that's the first step, which also is 1 point of exposure. So it's a micro dose of exposure. So then we go into step 2, and that's reading it out loud, either with someone or solo. But reading it out loud, there is a difference, and you'll be able to feel the emotions building up. If you got some feels going, and what happens if someone's really wound up, then they can experience motor mouth. So they're going through the story and they can say, when I was 6 years old, I had a bike and then I almost got hit by 2 cars and my dad took my bike away and I was really upset. And then it's slowing that down because our breath is still trapped in the chest. So it doesn't allow any space for our energetic body to move shit around. So then step 3 And if someone was reading that quickly, I would actually get them to stop and I would get them to start over and automatically slow it down. However,
punctuation.
Totally. And so going into step 3 is to read it 30% slower. So 70% your average talking rate. And what some folks can recognize is as they're speaking and they're saying it slowly, an automatic breath comes in because we can't hold our, well, we can, however, it's difficult to hold our breath while we're speaking slowly and reading on an emotional story. So it forces a breath in. So we do this automatically as well. When we're doing it actively, it's a that's known as a physiological sigh. Now, where do you see a physiological sigh most often? When people are bawling their brains out and they were crying so much that they have not been able to take a breath, and then the body's like, I'm done with your shit. So they could be crying and bawling their brains out, and then it's like, that's the way it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
it's kind of odd.
Totally. And so it inserts a breath. It happens by accident. So so folks then feel that tightness disperse, and now they feel it in other parts of the body, wherever it's hitting them the most. And then step 4, we read and breathe. So what we do is we put at every period, comma, and the occasional and. Actually, I'll reword that. Every comma, sometimes every period, sometimes comma, occasional and. There we go. We put a breath. We insert a breath. So as we're talking, we'll be able to finish up the first sentence of the story. As we're still maintaining that 30% slower rate of speech. And what this does is it locks or unlocks that intense buildup of pressure within our body, wherever it may be located. And some folks can feel like shakiness, they feel warmth, they feel like a burst, and they have an aha, they collect epiphanies. And that's one of my intentions when I work with someone, is to collect as many aha moments as possible.
Oh, okay.
Because an aha moment, and you had one, so you had one during our pre-show, and it was an aha moment. An aha moment is a connection between two differing, what we believe to be differing things, and those synapses connect, and we see a bigger picture because of that aha moment. And it's an enlightening moment of clarity. It is a moment of our head, our heart, and our intuition lining up. And so although this isn't a spiritual practice, it's a practical practice. I'm more inspired by philosophy with this practice. However, a happy accident as a side effect, which is how my mom would describe me, is happy accident. Side effect is those aha moments could be viewed as spiritual experiences. Some folks just have described it as spiritual. And I think that's cool. And I didn't do that on purpose. It was just like sick. It's like happy accident. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That is way too cool. Man, I like, the more that I learn about all this stuff, the more I find out that breath work is super duper important. And
totally.
It's also the story that we tell us, and what I love is that you're also talking about the different kinds of breaths. There's that upbeat breath, there's the low and slow, and you're finding a way to just get people into that Goldilocks zone, to get them to be receptive and not reactive to things. And yeah, I definitely had that aha moment pre-show, because you made me realize something about retelling my story, about being able to not just recreate it, but bring present me there, which was crazy, because I've always been like, okay, I'm going to go back in time, I'm going to look at the story, and I'm going to just look at it through a different lens or something, a different perspective, change the story up a little bit. And while that has helped, the thing is that I was going back to that emotional state that I was in during the story. I wasn't bringing present emotional self with me. And so whenever I would come back to present, it'd be like, okay, well, I kind of dealt with it a little bit, but now I feel a little like not, I feel better, but not better at the same time, kind of thing, because it was always me bringing stuff back because I was putting myself back into that situation. So you're essentially telling and helping people go like, all right, get good here, go back and see things different over there, a little bit, then really surmised kind of chopped up bastardization of it. But
I think you're crushing it. I'm digging it, dude.
but you're sitting there and you're also not telling people that what they may be experiencing is wrong either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you're understanding that with it being somatic and physiological all throughout, is that people are going to experience maybe similar feelings to certain emotions, and you've seen other people have different reactions to the same emotion that other people have different ones to. So with that being said, what are some of the obstacles that a lot of people come across with this?
One would be the obstacle. One would be not, I don't want to say not having the belief. If someone is, okay, I might go harsh on this one.
Okay.
If someone is so connected to the victim mentality that they have no desire to change it, because desirability is going to be the core focus, because if someone doesn't desire it, then they're not going to make the choice to do it.
Yep.
And when I say victim mentality, to apply a definition to that one as well, the victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. So to be a victim is to have those repeating thoughts working against us rather than for us. And when I say without the absence of clear evidence, what I'm saying is not the story, not the experience. It's using that story of X amount of years ago to grant yourself permission to feel crappy today. So like you said, how you visited that story and you pulled a little bit back. This one is, you have the story and you're diving in and you're bathing in it and you're crock potting in it, slow cooking in it, maybe a little bit of pickling depending on the story, and then you're pulling that to the present. So it's just differing degrees of that. So
yeah,
it would be that component. And so what often gets in the way of desirability is not having the awareness that there is a potential solution. And so if someone sees a potential or a possibility, then they're going to be more likely to venture into it and at least explore and discover it works or doesn't work. Knowing's better than not.
Yeah,
because then at least that's one more way or one more thing to take out. And Thomas Edison said that about his light bulbs. He said, one of the interviewers said something like, how do you feel about it taking you 1,000 times to create the light bulb, or 1,000 failures? And he said, it wasn't 1,000 failures. I just learned 999 ways to not do it. And so if we try a modality, and that's another thing with me, I'm not saying that this practice and this modality is the end all be all. I don't think it's this or that. I think it's this and that. And I like to collaborate, because with collaboration, there's elevation. So I like to purposefully create that holistic aspect. I just go to the first principles, where it's words, stories, and breath, and our behavior runs downstream from those.
Okay. That is very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know if that word's going to arrive in time. Sorry.
No, it's all good. If it pops up, It'll come up.
Yeah, it's something that's in my lexicon that I don't use that often. So it's just one of those like, oh, well, it was there and it's gone.
Yeah.
Um, but we are near the end of the episode for the radio. So real quick, do you have any shout outs for anyone that is listening on air?
Absolutely. Uh, Shout outs would be for my socials. I'll go with the socials.
Socials to people, anything.
Sweet.
This is your
Oh, you
episode.
know what? Okay, for socials, I'm Dapper Dude Kyle everywhere. If you're on chess.com, I'm also there too as Dapper Dude Kyle. And something that I want to leave as the message that I really like sharing is to keep up the kindness. And I say keep up the kindness because kindness is a practice. It's not an emotion or a feeling. I don't trust flaky emotions, flaky feelings. I like to observe and then make my own little decisive decision afterwards. So kindness is a practice. Kindness is something that we can participate in, and by investing our time into being kind, it's going to reciprocate. Because as we are being kind to ourselves and others, we're training other people around us how to behave around us. So by extension, as a side effect, more people are going to be kinder to the person because they're giving the kindness. And I have this crazy one. This is a cool one where it's the thing that we feel is lacking is probably the very thing we can give. If we're lacking in love, we can give love. If we're lacking kindness, we can give kindness.
Oh man, that's deep. I love
Sick.
that. That is really good. Well, thank you for that. And for anyone listening, definitely follow him on social because he's got some good stuff. Also, I do want to ask on Retrieving Sanity, we do like to have people on more than once, catch up, see how things are going. Just and considering that we had an entire hour pre-show, considering we had that, I'm pretty sure that we can have some really good episodes talking about all sorts of things because I don't think we stayed in like one genre during the pre-show at all. So
Oh no. Yeah.
And a lot of those topics are going to be something that we can explore a whole lot. But for this episode, if y'all want to listen to the entire thing, check out retrievingsanity.com. Check out Retrieving Sanity on Facebook, on YouTube, and you'll also find links to all of Kyle's socials and everything else there. If y'all don't have an easy time getting to them, listening on the radio or whatever. But for now, we're going to end the radio episode here, and we'll see y'all next week. Shalom. All right. So, marked. All right. You want to keep going for a little bit or what?
Let's see. Whereabouts do you want to explore? Is there anything, or actually, this will be the question that could, because I'm totally cool in either direction.
Okay.
Is there anything that has to be said that hasn't been said yet?
Ooh, for the show? Or...
In general, yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, let's in the context of the show.
What hasn't been said yet? Is there?
Let me feel into this one.
I don't really think so. I kind of feel like...
I feel content.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, I feel pretty good.
Likewise. Yeah, we can call it on there because I can just come back on and we can just freaking go guns a-blazing.
Okay, that sounds good to me.